This is gross and grim and deranged on every level. This weekend, she decided to invoke the memory of dead Princess Diana.
Did Meghan Markle really just use Princess Diana's memory as a prop for attention? That's the question that blew up the internet this weekend. And it's the reason Prince Harry, for the first time in a long time, didn't swallow his anger.
This is Meghan Markle's sickest stunt yet. In a deliberate attempt to terrorize her long-suffering husband, she thinks that's a win, Britney. No, we see you, Meghan, and now the world sees you.
Paris, flashing lights, velvet ropes, and one short video that cracked the glass facade they've spent years polishing.
Legs up as she went past the tunnel in which Diana Spencer was so tragically killed in Paris.
In that clip, Meghan lounges in the back of a chauffeured car, phone up, legs stretched out as the city glows outside the window. It looks like any influencer moment until you realize where the car is. The route slides past the underpass where Diana took her final breath. For most people, it's a tragic landmark. For Harry, it's the darkest night of his life. And when that video landed, something inside him finally snapped. This was supposed to be her big re-entry, Paris Fashion Week, front row, the careful choreography of a royal-turned-celebrity reclaiming the spotlight. The hair, the pose, the laugh that reads as effortless on camera. For a few hours it worked. Photographers got their frames, stylists got their credit, and Meghan got the attention that says, "I'm back." Then that few seconds of footage detonated the story. The comments shifted from praise to pure disbelief. People weren't arguing over a dress or a seating chart anymore. They were asking why anyone, let alone Harry's wife, would cruise that route, post that angle, and smile. Insiders say the moment Harry saw it, the air in the room changed. He's handled a lot: tabloids, betrayal, family fights, the constant churn of noise. He's gotten good at swallowing the heat. Not this time. What he saw wasn't a misreading by the press, it felt personal. Not symbolism, not content, pain. He confronted her. No press office, no palace stagecraft, no carefully worded joint statement to dress it up. Just a husband telling his wife that she crossed a line that shouldn't exist. He used words like cruel, attention-seeking, a betrayal of everything his mother stood for. And according to people who were close enough to feel the tension through the walls, Meghan didn't flinch. "It's just a location," she allegedly said, "not your property." That sentence hit him like a slap, because to him it isn't a pin on a map. It's where his childhood ended. What followed didn't smooth anything over. Meghan didn't disappear. She didn't apologize. She doubled down on visibility. Cameras, carpets, the next show on the schedule, Balenciaga front row again, the flashbulbs refusing to blink. The brand still sits under a long shadow in the public mind, and Meghan knew that. That's part of why the images felt like gasoline on a fire. The narrative that had been forming all day hardened into something ugly. When the attention fades, she finds a new way to bring it back. For some, it was proof of a strategy. For Harry, it was a new kind of betrayal layered on top of the old. Here's where the story stops being about Paris and starts being about a pattern. If you zoom out on the last few years, there's a rhythm you can feel even if you can't always explain it. Shock, silence, spotlight, a documentary, an explosive interview, a lawsuit, a staged photo that hits the nerves people think are dead, then nothing, no comment, no explanation, just the churn of debate keeping the names hot. Then a return, carefully timed, reframed as resilience. Maybe the tunnel video fit the rhythm by accident, maybe it didn't. But as the hours went by and there was still no acknowledgement, no "we misjudged this," no "we didn't realize," only the same practiced smile, it became harder for people to see coincidence. Meanwhile, Harry did something new. He didn't play along. He walked out of an event rather than perform normal. He refused to travel with her afterward, at least according to those who watched their cars go separate ways. He stopped protecting the brand. For years his instinct has been defense, shielding her from a press he believes is always sharpening a knife. He thinks about the worst night of his life when he hears those cameras crackle. He thinks about history repeating. But in Paris, history felt mocked instead of feared. That's what broke him. If this had been one bad decision on one long night, it might have faded. But the reaction online wasn't just outrage, it was analysis. Frame-by-frame breakdowns of the route, the timing, the angles. The car didn't just happen to pass the underpass. It mirrored the final turns of a night that still lives behind millions of eyelids. Fashion commentators called it tasteless. Royal watchers called it chilling. Even normally cautious outlets admitted, with a rare frankness, that Harry would likely take a very dim view. And the defense that trickled out, she didn't know, it's a tenuous link, didn't square with what people saw. The most brutal part of this storm is the human part. You can see it in the footage from later that weekend if you know what to look for. The way Harry's jaw locks when she reaches for his arm and he pretends he didn't feel it. The way she flashes that micro frown before snapping the smile back into place. The way he walks a few paces ahead, eager just to get to the door, desperate for the flash to stop. There's no shouting, they're far too media trained for that. But sometimes silence tells the story more honestly than words. It's not a marriage anymore, it's a performance, someone whispered after watching them drift through a lobby like two strangers wearing matching costumes. Back home, the spin machine started. Meghan's camp tried to reframe the weekend as quiet support for a creative friend, a misunderstood woman bullied for existing near a place connected to grief. The word quietly popped up in headlines that were anything but quiet. She was said to be misquoted, misjudged, misread, and perhaps sometimes she is. But this time, people didn't buy it, because there's a difference between being misunderstood and refusing to understand. The tunnel isn't a metaphor. It's where a mother died, where two boys became a storyline against their will. Posting that moment like it was just another night out didn't read as empowering. It read as cold. Harry took the opposite route. He vanished into a soft California silence. The pictures that did slip through looked like a man who'd finished a marathon in sand. No loud statements. No convenient leaks about how unfair the coverage was. Just absence. You don't have to say "I'm hurt" for people to see it when your shoulders fold in. And for once, even the voices that usually roll their eyes at him shifted. You could feel a strange sympathy emerging around him, the kind he hasn't felt from the public in a long time. It's hard to defend a lot of the choices he's made, but it's also hard to look at that video and not think, this would break anyone. All of this lives under one shadow, Diana's. She is the ghost in every room they enter, the headline that refuses to age, the mirror everyone holds up to Meghan, whether she wants it or not. From the jewelry to the photo recreations to the talking points about compassion, Diana is the currency of their narrative and the burden on Harry's back. Some will say Meghan honors Diana, others will say she imitates her. But this is the first time it felt like something else entirely. Exploitation of a sacred wound. You can honor a legacy with grace. You can't turn the place of someone's death into a backdrop and expect grace in return. That's why this moment feels like a hinge. Before Paris, the fairy tale still had threads to cling to. A prince leaving an institution to protect his wife. A woman fleeing cruelty to build a life beyond it. A love story challenged, but not dismantled. After Paris, something essential snapped. The story stopped being about escape and started being about control. Who controls the narrative? Who controls the camera? Who controls the pain? The difference between truth and performance shrank to a hairline crack that now runs through every frame they share. There are louder demands now. Strip the titles, cut the ties, end the charade. That's an easy thing to say from the comfort of a couch. Reality isn't that simple. Titles don't solder relationships, and removing them doesn't heal wounds. What might help is something much more complicated. An admission, not to the press, not to the public, to each other. An admission that the cycle is real. Shock, silence, spotlight. It works until it doesn't. It sells until it shatters. And in Paris, it shattered. For the first time, Harry didn't stand in front of a bullet for the brand. He stepped aside and let it hit. He looked at the performance and saw what it had cost him. His peace, his trust, and worst of all, the sanctity of his mother's memory. Maybe that's why the video burned the way it did. Not because the world is desperate to punish a woman at a fashion show, but because grief deserves boundaries, because some places shouldn't be content, because we're starved for authenticity in an economy that rewards outrage, and the line between living a life and feeding an algorithm is almost invisible now. It's easy to say just ignore it. It's much harder when your trauma trends by design. So where do they go from here? If this is just another spike in a graph, we'll see the playbook soon enough. A charity appearance, a soft focus interview, a new project that promises healing while reigniting the debate. The cycle always offers a way out, as long as you're willing to pay with a little more of your soul. Or maybe this time is different. Maybe the only path forward that doesn't turn into another headline is the quiet one. No content, no carefully angled windows, no proximity to ghosts. A decision to stop making the most painful things marketable. Harry once said all he wanted was to make sure history didn't repeat itself. He meant the press frenzy. He meant the chasing cars and the flash that feels like thunder. But history also repeats as addiction. The addiction to attention dressed as purpose. The need to be seen so badly you forget how to see the person next to you. That's the history repeating here. Not the night itself, but the storm that feeds off it. If there's a redemption arc left for them, it starts with a simple human understanding. When love becomes a performance, it stops being love. When grief becomes content, it stops being grief. Draw the boundary, respect the dead, protect the living. And if you make a mistake, and everyone does, say it. Not because a PR team advised it, but because the person you married needs to hear it from you. The sad truth is that nothing around this couple happens by accident anymore. Every frame has a job. Every outing has a purpose. That's why Paris felt so honest by accident. It showed us the raw edge of the machine, the tired eyes, the forced smile, the distance that no caption can close. It showed us that behind the theatrics and the millions of opinions, there's a man who lost his mother, and a woman who may have forgotten where the performance ends. Maybe the world doesn't need one more statement. Maybe it needs a pause. No microphones, no soft lighting, no designer front row. Just two people in a room, taking off the armor, telling the truth. I hurt you. I didn't think. I'm sorry. It sounds small. It would be the biggest thing they've done. Until then, the questions will keep echoing. Did she know what she was doing? Was it a terrible coincidence or a calculated route? Is the cycle a plan or just reflex? And the only person whose answers matter is the one who stood in that underpass when he was 12 and decided, without deciding, that he'd hate cameras for the rest of his life. If he can forgive, maybe there's a path. If he can't, maybe the show ends here. Here's what I know. The internet moves on. The wound does not. You can bury it under a new speech, a new deal, a new dress, but it waits. It waits in hotel hallways and backstage corridors, and the few seconds before the elevator doors close. It waits in a tunnel in a city that looks golden at night until you remember what's underneath. If they don't change the pattern will change them. And the only way out of a performance is to stop performing. So yes, the video was short. The fallout won't be, because in those seconds, the mask slipped just enough for the world to see what Harry has been feeling, that what hurts most isn't the press or the criticism or the power they left behind. It's the sense that the one person who should have protected his ghost turned it into a lens. That's the reason he exploded. That's the reason this moment matters. And that's the reason the next move, whatever it is, had better be real. And yet, as much as this storm feels like the end of something, there's another truth underneath it, one that even Harry might not be ready to admit. Meghan isn't the only one addicted to the performance. The world is too. The same public that condemns her for courting attention keeps clicking, keeps watching, keeps demanding the next chapter. Outrage has become entertainment. Every scandal becomes a spectacle, and every apology becomes a new opening act. Meghan knows this, whether consciously or not. That's why silence works better than contrition. It feeds the speculation machine. The less she says, the more we fill in the blanks, and every blank equals another headline. It's a cycle as old as celebrity itself, but this one has a royal twist. Because Harry and Meghan aren't just any couple, they're the living link between two worlds that were never meant to merge, the monarchy's sacred ritual of silence and Hollywood's religion of exposure. One thrives on mystique, the other on transparency. Even when that transparency is staged, when those two collide, what's left is confusion. You can't be both a mystery and a reality show, but that's the tightrope they walk, and the fall is always just one misstep away. What makes the Paris episode different is that it didn't just break public trust, it broke something inside the story itself. Before, the controversies had clear sides. Harry and Meghan versus the palace, the underdog couple versus an outdated institution. People could pick a team, but now the lines are blurred. There's no villain in a tiara to blame. This time, the pain came from within their own circle. It's the first time Harry's anger wasn't directed at the press, the firm, or the public. It was aimed at the woman beside him. That shift changes everything. Because once you see your partner as the source of the storm, you can't unsee it. And that's why this isn't just another tabloid week, it's a pivot in the narrative. The tone of the coverage, the tone of the comments, even the tone of Harry's silence all carry something new: exhaustion. Not the dramatic, camera-ready exhaustion of a victimized royal, but the quiet kind, the kind that seeps in when you've run out of defenses. You can sense that Harry's finally realizing the cost of keeping up a war with the world. Every headline meant to protect Meghan chips another piece off his piece. Every attempt to rewrite their image only writes him further out of his own story. Meanwhile, Meghan's camp keeps the PR wheel turning. Her stylists, her brand advisors, her social media consultants, they understand something the average viewer doesn't. They know that you can't erase outrage, you can only outlast it. Stay visible long enough, keep smiling long enough, and eventually people grow numb. It's a cold strategy, but an effective one. The public may never forgive, but it will forget. The question is whether Harry can imagine being him, caught between love and legacy. On one side, the memory of a mother who died running from cameras. On the other, a wife who seems to need them to breathe. It's a contradiction he can't reconcile. Every flashbulb drags him backward. Every photo op erases another inch of the peace he once promised to protect. And yet he can't walk away, because walking away would mean another headline, another Harry abandons Meghan narrative. In trying to escape the system, he's built a smaller, crueler version of it around himself. Friends say he's begun to question everything, not just the media, not just the palace, but the choices that led him here. For the first time, he's seeing how every move they make feeds the same machine they claim to hate. The documentaries, the interviews, the social campaigns. They were supposed to reclaim control. Instead, they created a monster that now dictates their every move. Harry's trapped not by Meghan or by royalty, but by the story itself. The story that sells because it never ends. Meghan, on the other hand, seems to believe that endings are just rebrands. When one image cracks, she paints another. She's not the villain she's made out to be, not entirely. She's a woman who's learned that in this era, sympathy has a shelf life, and reinvention is survival. Every controversy becomes a costume change. One week she's the misunderstood humanitarian. The next, the unbothered fashion icon. Then the silent survivor. The script keeps evolving, and as long as it does, she stays relevant. It's not empathy that keeps her name alive, it's elasticity. But elasticity has limits. You can stretch an image only so far before it snaps, and that's what Paris might have done. It's not that people suddenly discovered who Meghan is, it's that they stopped believing the act. There's a difference between mystery and manipulation, between reinvention and repetition. When every comeback feels like déjà vu, the magic fades. What once felt powerful now feels performative. What once looked rebellious now looks reckless. And here's the twist no one wants to admit. The public isn't mad just because Meghan crossed a moral line. They're mad because she exposed the fragility of their own fascination. We loved the story of Harry and Meghan because it made us feel something, a fantasy of freedom, rebellion, love conquering tradition. But when the fantasy turns into discomfort, when it reminds us that even fairy tales can be self-destructive, we recoil. We call it disrespectful, tone-deaf, sick. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's just the mirror we don't like looking into. Still, there's a human cost that cuts through the noise. Behind every think piece and hashtag is a man who lost his mother in a flash of light and metal, and a woman who believes control equals safety. They're both trying to rewrite trauma in real time and both failing in opposite directions. Harry hides from the spotlight that defines him. Meghan chases it to prove she can handle it. The tragedy is that neither approach brings peace. It only feeds the same hunger that killed Diana's anonymity decades ago. You can feel the irony circling. Harry, who once blamed the monarchy for sacrificing humanity to image, now lives in a version of that same trap. He traded the palace for production deals, the courtiers for consultants, the crown for a camera. The props are different, but the performance is the same. Meghan didn't invent the act, she just directed it. And Harry, ever the loyal soldier, learned his cues by heart until one day he couldn't. So what happens when the audience stops clapping? That's the moment we're approaching. The outrage over the Paris video will fade, as all outrage does. Another scandal will rise to replace it. But the trust, the credibility, the belief that Meghan stands for something bigger than herself, that's gone. Once you cross the line between sympathy and spectacle, there's no going back. The public can forgive mistakes, but it can't forgive insincerity. And Harry, whether he admits it or not, knows that. That's why his silence is louder than any statement could be. He's not strategizing, he's grieving. Not just for his mother, but for the man he thought he could be outside the palace walls. The man who thought love would save him from legacy. Instead, he's watching legacy consume love. Every time Meghan reaches for a camera, he sees another piece of his past slipping away. Every time she says ignore the noise, he hears the echo of a flash in a tunnel. The saddest part? They could have had everything. A new kind of royalty. A modern family that bridged two worlds. The goodwill of millions who wanted them to win. But the thing about lightning in a bottle is that once you start shaking it for profit, it burns. And now the glow that once made them untouchable is the very thing setting them on fire. Maybe there's still a small window for redemption. If Meghan were to show something real, regret, humility, humanity, it might stop the free fall. If Harry were to forgive, not for optics, but for himself, it might start the healing. But that would require both of them to do something they haven't done in years, turn the cameras off, to realize that silence isn't a brand, it's a boundary, that the world doesn't need to see everything to believe in something. Because at the heart of all this noise is a simple truth. The tunnel where Diana died isn't just a place, it's a warning. A warning about what happens when image devours identity, when the chase for control ends up controlling you. Harry understands that better than anyone alive. Meghan perhaps never will until she sees the look on his face when her next headline drops. And that's where the story leaves us for now. Not with closure, not with a happy ending, but with a silence heavy enough to feel like the breath before a storm. Maybe they'll reconcile, maybe they'll fracture beyond repair. Either way, the cameras will be waiting, because they always are. That's the tragedy Diana tried to outrun, and it's the one her son now lives inside. So as the lights of Paris fade and the world scrolls on to its next outrage, one question lingers. When every moment of your life becomes content, what part of you is still real? The answer for Harry and Meghan may determine not just their future, but the legacy they'll leave behind. Because love built on performance can look dazzling under the spotlight, but when the lights go out, all that's left is the echo of applause and the hollow space where peace should have been.